Many people know this, but the Bible does talk on more than one occasion about a multitude of counsellors. Admittedly, it's the wrong type of counsellors. It's counsellors with an E rather than an I, but I'm willing to overlook that, viewer. In the multitude of counsellors there lacketh not wisdom, it says in the fine Shakespearean language of the King James Version, which sounds like a good starting point because we do need wisdom to guide and govern a city, and however much experience and expertise we have, we're not wise if we think that we have all of the answers. So we pray for wisdom, Father God. We pray that you will guide the minds and the hearts of our leaders in this city, in this council, in this meeting, for good and for the welfare and the benefit of our city. Another verse in Proverbs says, without counsel, hopes are disappointed, but in a multitude of counsellors, they are established. It's the wrong type of counsel again, but it wouldn't be the first time that words were gently massaged and turned to mean something slightly different than they were originally intended. Without a full council meeting, hopes will be disappointed, but in our multitude of counsellors, things will be established. They'll be established as a result of today's meeting as we gather here with servant hearts to serve the people of our city and to give of our best, to seek the welfare and the prosperity of our people. And we pray for provision in the face of cuts and austerity, in the face of the no that we so often hear. I would pray for finance. I pray that you, Lord, will turn the heart of national government towards us and towards the real and pressing needs of our community. We pray for a release of finance into the areas that desperately need it, and for the good use of finances and resources that we do have. Thank you that this is a council that cares about homelessness, that cries out against poverty, that gets upset about inequality and injustice, that cares about social care and health, and good education and development of young people, and skills, training, so many things. Enable us, Lord, to do what we want in our hearts, to do what we see in our mind's eyes, so that this city of Salford will be a positive place, a community of hope, of peace, a place that pioneers new ways of doing things, where diverse people work together to make things happen and to make things better. Guide our minds and thoughts so that from this meeting there might come clarity and unity, and that indeed in the multitude of counsellors there will not lack wisdom. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
All set. Anyway, good morning. And today is a particularly special day, which I'll mention at the end of the agenda. But we'll start the agenda this morning with any items of special business. No?
I'm going to make reference to your time limits.
Oh, yeah.
So you do that next.
Yeah. Announcements of any special business? No? We are going to be celebrating very much the work that's gone on from 4 councillors that are retiring today, but we'll do that at the end of the items on the agenda. Okay. Item 2, apologies. Councillor Lewis. Item 3, declarations of interest. Any councillor got any interest to declare on the agenda? No? Okay. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of January and the 28th of February. Are we happy with those minutes? Here, a true record.
Question, Councillor Collins.
Councillor Collinson.
It's working.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say a few words about the Budget Council. Is this the appropriate time to do it?
It's in the minute.
Well, it's the fact that we supported the budget. Can I just say a few words about that? Right.
Think.
There's no issue with minutes.
I'll sit down, I think. It's not. You can
Matters
bring it.
arising from the minutes. Yes. So that's not now. Well, well, what I wanted to say really was, obviously I'm not the finance spokesperson for the group. However, it was brought to my attention that a member of this council posted on Facebook that there was actually no point in Salford having an opposition, as we didn't oppose anything in the budget presented last month. We didn't oppose it because, although we may have presented it, it's
If this is a complaint about a member or something that happened on social media, then it needs to be taken outside the meeting with the monitoring officer, and it wouldn't be appropriate to mention it in here. And this isn't part of the minutes or the matters arising, so I think we'd need to leave that now and move on with the agenda.
She could bring.
Okay. Item 5, receipt of petitions, communications. Councillor Hudson.
Yes. This is the biggest petition Earlham and Cadishead residents have ever been taken part in. It has 4,975 signatures. I have handed the petition in to officers previously because it was too heavy for me to carry up the stairs. We, the undersigned residents of Eccles, Earlham and Cadishead, strongly oppose the proposals of Peel Holdings to build up to 1,400 houses on Boysnoke Park Golf Course. It's vital that we have a green buffer zone between Addison Road, Crossfield and City Airport. We believe that Boysnoke Park Golf Course is an excellent leisure facility for the local community, and it has our full support.
Who's going to send the petition?
Needs to be. Mike, can you get a petition, please? We've got it, right.
That was well done. You did very well there, Christian. Okay. Item 6, nomination for the office of Ceremonial Mayor 2018 and 19, with a prompt I've got here to call upon Councillor Paul Wilson to move. Call upon Councillor Paul Wilson and seconded by Councillor Stephen Esling. Paul.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen and fellow councillors. Firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Connor for his service to the city. He's been a great ceremonial mayor for the last 12 months. About time you can have that pint you deserve, Peter, and I will take you up on that offer. So I'll see you in the pub. A year ago, I had the pleasure of nominating my colleague, my father and friend, to be the Deputy Ceremonial Mayor. This year, it gives me even greater pleasure to be nominating for the position of Ceremonial Mayor for the municipal year 2018-19. As most people in this chamber know, my dad inspired me to be involved so actively in politics. It's not only due to his passion in socialism, but also for his great love of the city. My dad's a proud Salfordian, and he was born and raised in what's now called Langworthy. He spent almost his entire life living in Salford, apart from a short spell when he met my mum in '69 and got married and they moved to Earlham. A couple of years later, he moved back to Salford. His interest in politics has been thrust upon my brother and I. We were soon thrown into the world of politics, we willingly went to C&D marches, anti-Thatcher rallies. We even made to post leaflets in local and general elections, and even known to make the odd rosette as well. My dad was first elected to the council in 1983. It was a tough campaign, and he even enlisted me as a 10-year-old to go canvassing for him and Stan Orme. Of course, both were duly elected with my help. Not much has changed since '83. I'll be out canvassing again for this year's elections, and I'm sure we'll get a victory again in Weaston Seedley for Ronnie. Following my election to the council, I've had the pleasure of working with my dad and my fellow colleague, Councillor Stephen Heslin. We have a great team in Weaston Seedley, and I know he's going to continue to serve the residents of Weaston Seedley during the ceremonial mayor year. Finally, I wanted to finish by saying that over the years, some people have said that Ronnie's politics have changed. For anyone who knows Ronnie, they'll tell you he's still just as stubborn now as he was back in '83. He still believes in democratic elected socialism is the best way to make a difference to the people of Salford. And I know he'll continue to do that during his municipal year as ceremonial mayor. I'm confident that Ronnie is going to be a great ambassador for the city of Salford, and I wish him well in his term of office. Thank you.
Councillor Heslin, I'd like to second that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just to echo everything that Paul said about you, I know it's been a very good mayoral term, and we thank you, on behalf of the city for everything you've done this year. Just to echo everything Paul said, it's obviously been a great privilege to serve alongside Ronnie in the nearly 5 years that I've been on the council now. And obviously, as Paul said, he's got such a strong connection to Salford. It's a great honour to, reach the position of mayor, and I know he'll serve his term. Both him and Pat will be great advocates for this city and make a real difference over that year. Just to comment on some of the things he's done in his deputy mayoral year, I know he's had a great time and been to lots of different events where he's made presentations. I know one particular thing that he enjoyed was the CVS Volunteer Awards, where he handed out the certificates and met a lot of the volunteers that have taken part in that, and that gave him and Pat a great pleasure, and I'm sure things like that will carry on even more so during this next 12 months of his mayoral year. So it's a great privilege to nominate my ward colleague Ronnie Wilson to be the ceremonial mayor for the municipal year 2018-19.
Any questions or comments anybody wants to make on that nomination and second? No. Does the council agree that Councillor Ronnie Wilson is appointed to the position of ceremonial mayor for the year 2018 to 2019? Do you agree? Thank you very much, and good luck to Ronnie. Item 7, nomination for the office of Deputy Ceremonial Mayor 2018-2019. Can Councillor John Merry and moved by Councillor John Merry and seconded by Councillor Jim King, that Councillor Charlie McIntyre be appointed to the office of Deputy Ceremonial Mayor. Councillor Merry.
Okay, it gives me great pleasure to move the name of Councillor McIntyre to be Deputy Mayor. Having observed this for a number of years, I understand the tradition is not to make a big speech about his various qualities at this moment in time, but to save it for when he actually becomes the ceremonial mayor, which is a pity because I had a load of qualities I wanted to talk about today. I'll just finish with one. I'm particularly impressed by the efforts he's made to support his partner Tim by learning the rules of cricket, which has at least given them something to talk about over the dinner table. And I'm sure he'll bring the same diligence to doing the job of ceremonial mayor that he's done to learning the rules of the MCC.
Councillor King, would you mind seconding?
Chair, colleagues, it gives me very great pleasure to second the nomination of my good friend and colleague from Broughton, Councillor Charlie McIntyre, for the office of Deputy Ceremonial Mayor for the year 2018-19. And I will spare you the embarrassment of a speech from me this morning, you'll be pleased to know. So, Charlie, good luck. As Ceremonial Mayor said, I wish you good luck as well, as the Ceremonial Mayor mentioned to the nomination for the Mayor for next year. So, thank you.
Any questions or comments on those? No? So, does the council agree that Councillor Charlie McIntyre be appointed to the office of Deputy Ceremonial Mayor for the municipal year 2018-19? Do you agree? Thank you very much, and good luck to you also, Charlie. And don't forget, I'll be watching you. Okay. Item 8, Pay Policy Statement 2018-19. Lead member for the Workforce, Councillor John Ferguson, isn't it? Yeah?
Eric Pickles may have gone, but his legacy lingers on. And every year, one of the things that we have to do is to present the Council's pay policy. It's a statement regarding our local pay arrangements. I want to start off by saying that we consider ourselves to be an exemplar employer. We have been for a number of years, and one of the things that we want to do is to ensure that those on the lowest wages employed by the Council receive a fair living wage. And therefore, I'm very pleased at the very beginning to say that from the 1st of April, 1,300 people in the Schools and Services Directorate will receive an immediate pay increase in pay to the living wage when it increases from £8.45 to £8.75 an hour. And that is regardless of any national pay negotiations which are still going on. So from the 1st of April, 1,300 people will receive a pay increase. And as well as applying to those in our direct employment, the uplift last year was applied to over 300 care workers at 5 agencies which provide social care services to the city. The Council is transforming its services to provide the kind of services that people in the 21st century need, new technology and everything from what it used to be. And as well as transforming our services, we also need to transform our workforce so that they're able to use and be up to speed with providing those services. And therefore, and also, we need to be providing opportunities for those young people, particularly, who are not in education and employment and training. And so the report also sets out a framework for apprentice pay, which means that at starting it will be equivalent to the foundation national wage within 12 months of starting employment. As an employer, we provide a number of benefits to our employees, which they appreciate. That's including flexible working, a low-cost green car scheme, reduced gym membership, and childcare vouchers. We have a diverse workforce. 69.5% of our employees are female across the whole of the workforce, and in the wider corporate management team, it's 67% of the workforce there are female. We carry out an annual equal pay audit, and there is no pay discrimination within the council. In relation to transparency, we're also required to publish the ratio between the highest and low paid employees within the council, and that is currently 1.967, and it will reduce to 1.935 with the introduction of the living wage on the 1st of April. The new item which is in the report is the gender pay gap, which this is the first time it's been published, and you'll see in there that Salford has a mean gender pay gap of 14.5% and a median gender pay gap of 19.3%. That's the data within the report, and I'd commend it to the Council for acceptance.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Any questions or comments on that report? No? Does the Council then accept the report and its context? Oh, didn't see you. Sorry about that. This thing's always in way.
I'd certainly welcome report, and just want to say in particular from my remit, I'm delighted about the 300 care workers, the uplift that we've managed to achieve. We worked incredibly hard to do that with our 5 providers, and it's our ambition that we continue to work so that our employees and, you know, with our other providers have really good employment standards, you know, on working practice. And it's my ambition that we manage to achieve this for all our care staff in nursing homes and residential homes across the city. That would be wonderful if we're able to achieve that, and working hard with providers to make that happen.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Is there any other comments or questions? Councillor Pevett.
Just a quick question in relation to gender pay gap. How does Salford compare to other organisations, not only in this area, but in Great Britain as a whole?
An interesting question, but whether the answer is quite as interesting, I'm not sure. Salford is I'm in two minds whether to give you a lesson in how the gender pay gap is calculated. There are 2 of them. I'll try to be very quick. We have a mean gender pay gap, and the calculation for that is totting up the hourly pay for all of the male employees and all of the female employees, taking the average of both and getting the difference between the 2. The median gender pay gap is where you take the middle number between them. If there's 100, it's 101, it's number 50, and what that number 50 is in the middle there. So Salford's mean pay gap is 14.5%. The national UK figure at the moment, because people are still submitting them, is 18.1%. So we are below that. The Guardian published an interesting article. I think they do one interesting article every week. And that is a report, they do a weekly report on the gender pay gap, because organisations over, I think it's over 250 employees are having to do this, and it's coming out all the time. And just some of the figures that were produced from other organisations in the last report. Goldman Sachs had a gap of 36.4%, ITN 19.6%, the BBC 10.7%, although I did note, which incidentally then shows how meaningless some of these numbers are, because I was also reading that there was a spat between John McEnroe and Martina Navratilova about what the BBC pays them, and McEnroe gets paid 10% of Navratilova.
10 times.
Grosvenor Group.
10 times.
10 times, sorry, I'm glad that there's somebody to correct me here with all these numbers.
Remember that one.
The Grosvenor Group 27.6, Toyota 29.7, Liverpool University 9% and KPMG 27%. So you'll see that we are, for what meaningful it is, we are in the bottom section of those numbers.
Any other questions, comments on that report? Thank you, Councillor Ferguson, for that. You wonderfully explained everything about the 10% and the 10 times.
I'll give an examination afterwards.
Okay. There's no other questions or comments on that. Does the council accept the pay policy in its context? Aye. Okay. Item 9, it's a statement of the elected city mayor, and I understand. Are you doing this, John?
Just to emphasise the apologies given at the start of the meeting, the City Mayor is at the Green Summit for the whole of Greater Manchester, and whilst he would have liked to have been here, I think it was generally agreed that it would be better if he was at that meeting fighting Salford's corner. Can I also make it clear to various people that I'm not here because it's Mayor for a day. On this particular occasion. He did ask me to make this particular statement, and I have looked around the room to see if anybody scowled or groaned at the thought of the Mayor not making it, but me making it instead. And that means you, Councillor Stone, so, let's make it clear. I am intending to be quite robust in making this statement in the mayoral tradition. But before I start, I want to pay tribute to those councillors, particularly Councillor Hodson, Councillor Bolkine and Councillor Bernard Lee. And is it Councillor Constant that's retiring on your side? I want to pay tribute to the efforts they've made in this chamber. And the reason I want to do that is I'm not sure that anybody outside of this chamber realises the tremendous personal sacrifice required to be on this particular council at this particular moment in time. You know, it disrupts family life. It means that you have to prioritise what you do. It means you have to look after the needs of your constituents above the needs sometimes of your immediate family. And for all of those reasons, I think anybody who is on this council deserves our grateful thanks for the time and effort that they actually put into doing this particular job. And it is, in fact, of course, the reason that democracy functions is because people are prepared to put in the time and efforts, as we'll see over the next few weeks, to get elected and to make a particular attempt to work the streets and to listen to the needs of the ordinary community. It wouldn't work without that effort from all political parties, and I want to make that absolutely clear. And I'm not sure who made the comment on Facebook about whether it's worthwhile having an opposition or not. It is essential to have an opposition party. And of course, we will be gently pointing out that the fact that you were unable to find any holes in our budget or anything wrong with it actually indicates what a fine group of sensible people we are to run this particular city, and how even the Tory party has given up on the idea of trying to attack us for financial profligacy. So, what I wanted to start with is to talk about what's going to happen on the 3rd of April. because on the 3rd of April, the brand new state-of-the-art freestanding midwifery-led unit Ingleside will be opening its doors. And I understand that women are already demanding to book into that, to actually have their babies at that particular unit. And I think it's a tribute to the Salford spirit that the Mayor so often talks about, that when we were told that we would have to lose our facility in Greater Manchester and that we'd have to make do without a midwifery-led unit in Salford, we didn't just say we are opposed to that, although we did say we're opposed to it. We set out to create one by ourselves with the support of the CCG to offer a genuine service to the women across the city and their choice to give birth to their baby in a home-from-home environment. So when the announcement took place in early 2017 to close the midwifery-led unit at Salford Royal, we took the decision, with support from Salford CCG, NHS England, Salford Royal and partners, to launch the campaign to keep babies born in our city and to find a suitable building. Now, the building has been totally modernised following bringing a magnificent Victorian building back into use. I'd like to thank the large numbers of people and organisations within this council chamber and elsewhere for their generous donations that have helped make our vision a reality. We're looking forward to up to 800 babies being born each year, and we're particularly looking forward to the first birth at the unit. And so we have made the decision, and I want to develop this theme as we go along, we have made the decision, in the face of decisions taken elsewhere, to actually fight for the people of this city, to continue to build our community, and to deal with the most difficult of circumstances by being positive about what we can do. And another failure has been the failure of successive governments, and I acknowledge that, my government as well as the Conservative government, to invest adequately in financing social and council housing. And it's the biggest single reason, I believe, for the homelessness crisis we are faced with today. And we've got yet further announcements, of course, by the government today to come about future deals and all the rest of it. But it's a bit late, quite frankly, for them to be waking up to a problem that every one of us have been living with in our wards. And so, one of the first announcements following the election of Paul Dennett as City Mayor was our intention to build new homes in the city for social and affordable housing. Now, the model we've developed, which was partly the brainchild of the late Councillor Paul Longshaw, was a business model for social housing funded entirely separately from the housing revenue account. We've set up a general development company with a housing arm, Derive. And the Derive model is important as an independent council developer allows us to choose accommodation and developable sites based on the scale of social need and not just market growth. It puts the initiative back into the hands of the local authority, and it also provides for a completely self-funded route for which we are able to provide homes at social rent in our city and spur the development of other affordable homes. We can actually invest based on the proceeds of growth within this city. And one of the things I've constantly argued for in this council chamber is that Salford can't afford to stand still. It has to take advantage of modern circumstances. It has to take advantages of all the opportunities that come our way. But we have to deliver for those opportunities for the ordinary people of this city. So we're looking at a mixed housing market approach to ensure local growth and to ensure against social ghettoisation. Amongst our ambitions to create affordable housing are our plans to secure continued growth in the city. And we feel it's important that we lift the aspirations of families who feel they have real opportunities to secure stable, affordable accommodation together with a good, well-paid job. And one of the other areas that we're working on to actually achieve that is the ambitious master plan to create a new university vision and city district at the heart of Salford's transforming economy. It's another demonstration of our capacity to innovate with partners across the city. The plan, and it obviously will go for a number of developments, and people, they will want to talk to local councillors and take account of their views, but it sets out a vision for the next 2 decades. Enhancing connections with surrounding neighbourhoods and communities, and tapping into the area's unique potential to deliver an unrivaled place to learn, live, work and visit. And the joint approach which they're arguing for, which we're arguing for, will link education with local industry, arts, culture, heritage and residential accommodation across 240 acres, offering one of the largest investment and development opportunities in the region, and creating a university that I believe will be unique in this country. Yes, it will be a centre of leading research, of cutting-edge work and so forth, but it will also be something more. It will be working in collaboration with industries in Salford to make it a genuine powerhouse for the creation and regeneration of jobs. Now, I want to talk briefly about cladding, if you don't mind. Some of you may have heard me talk about cladding rather a lot. And the facts remain, and I want to make it clear because I understand that some people on breakfast time this morning may have given a slightly misleading account of what the situation is. Pendleton Together have been carrying out extensive testing on a new cladding and insulation solution. The reason it has taken so long is it's not just enough to say, oh, the cladding's safe, and by the way, the insulation is safe. We have to test them together. We have to test them together in circumstances that reflect what's going to be found in Pendleton and on those blocks of flats. And we had to do that in Dubai as well because, surprise, surprise, all the testing facilities in this country were fully occupied. And the fire safety experts have now recommended a proposal in terms of the likely replacement insulation, which will be mineral fibre, and this will also be combined with a cladding with a mineral core. Now, I've talked to the ward councillors at great length to this. They're as anxious as I to see this proceed as quickly as possible. So we will be explaining to residents that that is the system that we will be adopting, but we will give them the opportunity to see it in action at Brotherton House, to actually give some feedback. But we're not going to embark on yet another round of consultation as to whether that's the right solution or not. We've got to move forward now, and we've got to come up with the right proposals, I think, for the area. We also have to deal with the issue of sprinklers on the blocks. There will be sprinklers on the blocks. We have made a commitment to that, and what we have to do is, again, talk to the residents about the right solution for that. One that will be sprinkled, there will be sprinklers in individual flats, but it will be done at a minimal inconvenience to tenants and will actually look after their interests and look after the prospect, for example, of dealing with individual rooms rather than the flat as a whole. So the work will commence this spring, and residents will be kept informed at every stage of the programme. Members are aware that the City Mayor has made a personal commitment to develop this work, and we will be starting talking to the residents very shortly. In fact, a newsletter has already gone out, I understand, to the residents outlining what the situation is. So I do appreciate the anxiety of residents, and I want to thank them for their patience. I will say, as a local authority, I think we're in the forefront of trying to solve this particular problem. And I can't help recalling what the Prime Minister said about this when she told us all that she would be making sure that resources was available at the time of Grenfell for councils to tackle this particular problem. Little did we realise that she meant that we would be making resources available and she would be refusing to provide a single penny from central government to support our particular work. And even Councillor Garrido, that well-known socialist, was not very happy about this and saying that this was entirely inappropriate. The government ought to be helping out. And I also think that we have private sector tenants or private sector owners in a great deal of jeopardy because of the nature of their lease requires them to find the money for external repairs. And I appeal I join with the London Mayor in appealing to this government, even at this stage, to change your mind, because you have a moral responsibility, if not a legal responsibility, which will need to be tested for the situation we are in. It's your building regulations that have put us in this particular position. Now, the argument from the government is that somehow those building regulations were misinterpreted. Well, over 200 building officers up and down the country had a collective hallucination and decided that the building control regulations said something entirely different from what the government imagines. Or the fact that the government felt that they had to issue their interpretation of the regulations shortly after Grenfell says it all, in my opinion. It says it all. They know that they're not on good solid ground, they know there's a problem, and they're trying to squirm out of responsibility. Well, the job of the public sector is to take responsibility for when things go wrong, not to try and duck it. Now, we did, of course, see the spring budget statement, which I felt, and I'll be fair, I'm going to be fair to Councillor Clarkson now, I felt Councillor Clarkson's budget statement here had rather more substance than Mr Hammond's spring budget statement, right? At least he didn't tell us that austerity was now going to be finished and that somehow down the road he'll make an announcement to that effect, but he couldn't quite make it now. I was incredibly disappointed about it. Doesn't he know that the public sector is suffering at the moment from years of austerity, that services are on their knees, that we're having to cut back to the provision that we're making to people? Doesn't he know that what local government does has a real impact on people? And there was nothing on that in the spring statement, just a series of platitudes and a series of statements about how wonderful the economy is. Well, Mr Hammond, if the economy is so wonderful, then why not do something that helps ordinary people on the ground and deals with their particular problems? Later on, Councillor Boschel is going to be actually outlining the anti-poverty strategy. Do we need an anti-poverty strategy in this day and age to tackle the effects of poverty in our city? Well, yes, we do. And the reason we do need that is because of the actions of Mr Hammond and his government, which has failed to deal with the interests of the ordinary people of this city. Now, there's some good examples of that. The BBC report, for example, academy budgets. Do you remember how academies were going to be the financial solution to all the problems that schools face? Well, the BBC recently reported that academy budgets are in an even worse state than those of council-run schools, with 8 out of 10 in deficit. And the report predicts that 2 more years could see the entire sector facing insolvency. So, the government's austerity programme has not just bitten in places like Salford, it's bitten in Tory-controlled Northampton County Council. And if they ever accuse us of infighting in the Labour Party, I shall just mention Northampton County Council to the Conservatives. Here we have a situation where the leader of the Conservative-led council says, well, the reason we're in this situation, the reason our council is bankrupt is because of the awful Tory government. Here we have the Tory government saying, well, it's because of the incompetence of the Tory party leader, which, well, we put in place, but we don't think is very good now to actually deliver on our financial programme. Well, the fact remains, I've got some sympathy with the council, but the fact remains that we are in a situation now when even Tory councils are saying to the government, enough's enough, and it's time you did something about local government finance and stop the burden falling on ordinary people and actually do something about taxation in this country so that there can be support for local government. Now, we're going to see something. On Saturday, which I thought I would never have to see, which is a demonstration about nursery education and about getting the Tories to put some more resources into it. And I want to pay tribute to the work that Councillor Stone has put in to try and sort this issue out, and the work that the Mayor has put in. My first political experience was when I was 4 years old, and I couldn't understand why my dad wasn't with me in order to read me a story. And my mother said to me, she said, he's actually out knocking doors. He's knocking doors to stop the Tories closing your nursery school. And did I think that 50 years later, I would be still fighting the same fight and still campaigning for the same thing to happen? I thought the Tories had actually understood the importance of nursery education. I thought they'd actually finally come round to it, but it appears that they're still only interested in supporting the private sector. So again, I find myself urging everybody to go out on Saturday to the demonstration, to show our support for the ordinary people of this city and to campaign for the Tory government to give us a decent settlement. Now, some of you may be aware that there's something happening on May the 3rd as well, which is a local election. Right? And if you don't mind, I've got a clear message I want to give to this side of the chamber, which is how we need to stand tall and be proud of what we've achieved in this city. In the face of a vindictive, nasty government that is determined to actually emphasise, as one person said, the cost of everything and the value of nothing. In the face of that determined and vindictive government, we've delivered in this city on a whole host of issues which we need to get across to the electorate, what we've delivered on for this city, and the reasons that we've been able to do that, and how much more we could do if we had a government that was in tune with the ordinary aspirations of the people of this city. So we're going to have two clear messages. First of all, the achievements of this council, whether it's about building new social homes, whether it's about making the health system work, whether it's about holding central government accountable, and also the weaknesses of central government and the fact that their obsession with Brexit has meant that nothing else has been tackled in this particular country. So be proud when you go out on May the 3rd and before that. Be proud of what this council has achieved. Be proud of what you personally have achieved. And I am confident we'll get the right result and show that the people of this city to reject this government and support our party. Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Oh, yeah, I got that.
Yeah. Councillor Turner.
Just bring it out of the Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to thank Councillor Merry for his statement. It's rather a nice throwback to 2011 when I started on this council, and he always gave those. It's interesting to see that whilst the politics of Peter Mandelson have been banished from the Labour Party, the spin is very much still there. However, I just wanted to echo his earlier comments about the retiring members. Certainly it does require a certain degree of sacrifice to be on this council. It's not an easy council to be on, especially when you're in the minority. But in particular, I wanted to pay tribute to my outgoing ward colleague, Councillor Graham Compton, who has been a stalwart mentor and friend for the past 7 years. It's going to leave a void for me. Graham is a very good friend of mine, and he's been invaluable in helping me develop as a politician and as a person, and I'm also going to miss the jokes. So I just want to say thank you very much, Graham.
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I completely endorse what Councillor Merry said regarding councillors. I've always felt that it was a great honour to represent the people of the wards, and the amount of dedication and time 24/7 that councillors put in is absolutely admirable, and it's very difficult to get people to make that sort of commitment nowadays, and I applaud them for doing so. I also thought that Councillor Merry's speech was a refreshing speech from the usual rhetoric of the City Mayor. The City Mayor, I do want to thank him because I've spent some time at the public inquiry at Broadoak, and the council have come under an awful lot of criticism from the Peel's barrister, and they have misrepresented speeches made by Paul, and fortunately Paul was able to send a letter to the inquiry which was read out, just putting the record straight, because he was being misrepresented, and we didn't think that was fair, and nor did Paul, and he kindly put that right. So we're grateful for that, and we are grateful, of course, for all the public that attended it, and we now await the outcome. We've talked about, well, Councillor Merry has, about cladding. Yes, I agree. I feel another letter coming on. I do remember the government saying they would forfeit, that they would pay the bill. And I'm the sort of person, although I belong to the Conservative Party, if someone says they're going to do something, I feel they should do it. Yeah. And we also supported the recent letter to Mr. Gibb at Parliament, which was, again, it was a nicely termed letter without a lot of rhetoric, the sort of thing you do when you're trying to get money from someone. So I was grateful for that, and I had no hesitation in signing it. The trouble, I think, with the city mayor, he seemed to be spending a lot of time in Manchester. Do we know how much of the week he spends in Manchester? Because if he's spending a lot of time, because he keeps cancelling the meetings with me, maybe he just doesn't like me, I don't know. Possibly, that might be a probable. Yes. Well, on the report, I've done the cladding. Of course, May the 3rd, I am pretty certain that the Labour Party will not have the success they dream of. I think it'll be a very long time, certainly nationally, before Labour, under their present leadership, get anywhere, because people realise what a threat the present leadership of the Labour Party is. And I would just add, we hear a lot, but a lot of this money that Salford get is from the government. It's not, you know, it's from the government. What you don't say is that you're getting business rate relief of 100%, which is a great help. You managed to put 1.6 million to your revenue budget as a result. You got £800,000 from the government to help reduce the tax, or keep the tax, council tax rise to something more manageable, we hope. And the other thing that you don't mention is the share of the 10 million in further new burdens funding, addition to the 160,000 already received, the 31,000 through public sector audit appointments, the 190,000 new burdens funding for Homeless Reduction Act, 6 million additional funding adult social care. So I think that when you're criticising the government, you also have to say that the government do provide funds, and we are grateful for that. We never have enough money, let's face it, whoever's in power, we'll never have enough. But I think we've gone some way, and I think you should have a more balanced approach, not just go on and go on about austerity. It's, to me, it's, the word austerity now is becoming rather tiring. But anyway, I know you won't agree, but there you are. Thank you very much for your tolerance.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Collinson.
Thank you, Chair. Let's have another attempt at this. I'm not the finance spokesperson, obviously. However, it was brought to my attention that a member of this council posted on Facebook that there was actually no point in Salford having an opposition, as we didn't oppose anything in the budget presented last month. We didn't oppose it because although we may have presented it differently and made savings in different areas, when it comes to it, the end result would have roughly been the same. We've always put alternative or amendments to the budget in previous years to no avail. We still think that had some of our suggestions been taken up over the years, we maybe wouldn't be in quite such a bad way as we are now financially. However, we did agree at the last council meeting that we also felt that the cuts or savings have gone too far. We're happy to write to the government in a joint capacity regarding asking for more money, but only when the letters are written in a conciliatory fashion. Sometimes we have not agreed because the letters have been written in a very aggressive way, an aggressive tone, which I have to say I don't think is the way to ask for more money, really. All it does is gets people's backs up. Something happened to me recently which made me seriously question whether I still wanted to be involved in politics. What it has done has left me with virtually no trust in people whatsoever, which is a shame, actually, as I always used to be so trusting, but I've learnt my lesson. However, I was elected by the local people to represent them on local issues, which I think I do well, and given the opportunity in May, I hope to continue to do that. I'm dealing with some of the most complex cases in my ward at the moment that I've ever had to deal with. The residents whom I am doing my best to support have serious problems, which can only be dealt with on a local level. They just need help. They actually aren't that bothered about what political party helps them, but they come to me because I am their local councillor. I challenge issues which are national decisions when I can, but we on this side have to accept that we are limited in both number and influence. This is a Labour-run council, but some Conservative councillors are struggling too. However, we have 2 MPs in Salford. They are much better placed to fight our corner, are they not? If we work together better on areas which affect us all, we may end up with a more positive outcome. Thank you.
Very good, Gillian. Very good.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say to Councillor Merry that was an excellent speech and very well delivered. Secondly, I'd like to pay my own very short tribute to one of the retiring councillors, Councillor Bernard Lee. I have to say that 2 years ago, when I started out on the campaign trail, I was so nervous, but Councillor Lee, along... Yes. Oh, later, okay. Right, okay.
You've already done it. Dear, 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 dear. What a world we live in. I thought at the budget meeting a couple of weeks ago, by the way the opposition supported our budget, they had realised after 8 years that the issues relating vis-à-vis national government with their austerity ideological programme was absolutely crippling. This, not only this council, but councils up and down the country. Yet I hear Councillor Turner now almost austerity as though it's never happened. Dear me, Councillor Turner, I'll tell you, we've lost nearly 50% of our spend in 8 years. £190 million cut. Also, the forecast, well, it's more than a forecast, we've got it down now, that we're going to have to save another £15.5 million in 2019-2020. And you think austerity is nothing. You're fed up of hearing it. Dear me. It's an absolute tragedy what's happened to the people of this city over those 8 years with those cuts. And as Councillor Merry mentioned, the issue of poverty, that people are using food banks, that people are seeing services cut like never ever before. And you then say, well, the government
It's government money. Well, I thought it was all money. I thought it was all our money. That's what the government usually says. It's taxpayers' money that we all contribute to. And it is the inadequacies, I believe, of the tax position at the minute that local government installs on local government that brings about this problem. So when the Chancellor of the Exchequer says there's light at the end of the tunnel, light at the end of the tunnel, with all these cuts that we're actually making and going to have to make again. And by the way, Chair, he doesn't really tell the truth in that, does he? Light at the end of the tunnel. We know very well from an organisation that the Conservative Liberal coalition set up, the Office of Budget Strategy, made the statement that light at the end of the tunnel is not really there. The fact is, on the predicted growth, remember again, I'll remind you, if you forgot, that George Osborne said he would erode the deficit by 2015. A few years later, it was 2020. Now it's 2025-26. But to do that, so the Office of Budget Responsibility says, based on the growth figures that are predicted, he will have to raise £38 billion more in taxation. To meet that as a surplus, if he wants that surplus, and for public services to remain on the present spend. Well, I tell you this, do you think any Conservative government will raise taxes by £38 billion? I tell you what will happen if he wants that surplus. He will cut public services further. That's the deceit of what this government's about. And when Councillor Turner feels that on May the 3rd we won't do as well as we've done in the past, well, I tell you, we will do very, very well on May the 3rd. There is no question about it. We're already canvassing and seeing the response of people to what, on one hand, what this government has done, and on the other hand, what this Labour Council has done over the years in trying to mitigate those problems that they have suffered over the last 8 years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hines. Councillor John Warmison.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I just want to say a big thank you to Councillor Merry, really, for his statement on the cladding. It's been a hell of a time down on Pendleton. People have just been so anxious and really worried about what's happening. But I think I've got to pay tribute to the work that Councillor Merry's actually put in. You know, we've had phone calls at midnight, phone conversations about could we do this, could we do that. The work that's gone on looking at making sure that we had the right cladding to go up next time, because people really are anxious. And the one thing that we wanted to make sure is that we did have the right cladding so that people are safe and secure in their homes. And that's what this has been about. I think it has taken a long time, but it's taken a long time because we wanted to get it right. I think I pay tribute to the housing associations, particularly Pendleton Together, who've just done some tremendous work down there supporting the residents and the tenants. I think with the fire marshals, the checking that they've done, and I just think that we as a council and as a city working in partnership have been well ahead of a lot of other authorities. When I talk to colleagues around the country who've got the same difficulties that we've got, they're amazed at the amount of progress that we are making and the amount of work and support that we've done. And as I always say in this matter is, I cannot thank the residents and tenants of Pendleton area for the way that they've put up with what's going on. We know that there's going to be disturbances when we have to redo the cladding, and obviously we're going to start fitting sprinkler systems now, so it will be sort of work being carried out again after the refurbishment that we've already done. But they're a strong-hardy lot in Langworthy, and I'm sure that those people on the blocks will continue to work with us, and we'll continue to work with them and support them to the best that we can. So thank you, Councillor Merry, for the work that you've done and all those involved. And we will really, really want to make sure that our citizens in that area are safe. And that's what this has been about, making sure we've got the right materials so that they do feel safe and secure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warmsham. Councillor Jones, you're the next.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask Councillor Merry about his role at the LGA, because Councillor Turner doesn't think that the Salford City Mayor should visit Manchester, but I thought all meetings of the combined authority in Manchester, that's where the Greater Manchester elected mayor is, Andy Burnham, so I would have thought that that's where we want our Salford City Mayor to be, to try and influence decisions. And the same with Councillor Merry. We want Councillor Merry to influence the Local Government Association. But you don't need reminding, but I suspect Councillor Turner does. If you just have a quick Google, we know all about, if you like, the health service, education, the problems we're having with nurses and so on. But if you look at public libraries, we've had 265 closures in the last 5 years, and another 100 have been handed over to volunteers. What sort of society is it that shuts public libraries? I mean, we must be off our heads if we think austerity doesn't matter. Austerity does matter. Private nurseries, you're not only shutting public nurseries, but then the private sector take over. There's been over 100 private nurseries closed in the last 4 years due to insolvency and so on. Roads, yesterday, it said 24,000 miles of roads need urgent repair. Leisure centres are being privatised. Buses are declining everywhere in the UK. There is not one area of the UK where bus services are actually improving. Children's playgrounds are closing, and public parks, only the other day in one of the national papers, it said public parks face decline and neglect. So I think the question to Councillor Merry, I know you're well aware of these statistics, but I hope the Conservatives on the LGA are not fed up of talking about austerity, because unless we challenge the government, we're going to be lost.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor John Ferguson.
Just some very brief points, if I could do, first of all. You mentioned the birthing centre, and there's just, I mean, I paid a visit there at the start of the year in January, which was on an appalling day. It was really cold. I don't think we'd had the snow then. But apart from all the other people who've been thanked, I think we should also thank the building workers who've been working on that building throughout the winter, sometimes in some of the most appalling conditions. I wasn't going to make many other points, but I'm tempted to by the contradiction which comes from the other side, that Councillor Turner's saying that tells us about all this money that's coming, and Councillor Collinson says that they didn't put an alternative forward last time because they thought austerity had gone too far and that we'd had so many cuts. So just sort your ideas out and get some consistency there, please.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to thank John and echo what both the Deputy Mayor and John Warmsham, as a fellow ward councillor, have said about the cladding and all the work that's been undertaken around that issue. And I just want to also thank the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Kelly as lead member for housing and Pendleton together, and everyone who's been involved in this at looking at a solution for those residents in my ward. I'd also just like to say I'm absolutely delighted about the opening of the midwife-led unit at Ingleside. It'll be open from April the 3rd, as I think John's mentioned, and it's going to provide an absolutely fantastic facility for women with low-risk pregnancies to give birth in a holistic and personalised way. And I'm sure that it's, having met the staff from Bolton Foundation Trust that are going to provide that service, they're really enthusiastic, really keen, and I'm sure they're going to provide a really safe, high-quality service for our women across the city. So I'm really looking forward to that. Also, as always, we're a city of pioneers in Salford, and we're going to be providing perinatal mental health services in there, which I believe is a first in a midwife-led unit, as well as the traditional antenatal and postnatal classes. So we're going to have a whole range of really good services in there, and there's also going to be a community hub and space that can be owned by the public and the community for use in there as well. So I'm really looking forward to this. The official opening is on the 19th of April, and I look forward to actually attending there. I have been with Councillor Ferguson and a few other members to have a look round already, and it is absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, Councillor Gina Reynolds. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. I know I should probably try not to get as wound up as I do, but I'm really struggling, to be honest. I come into this chamber and often think, I won't make a comment. I've spoken a lot in previous council meetings, and I hear something from the opposition benches that just makes me fundamentally so angry to my core. And what it is today is hearing the leader of the opposition say that he's finding austerity tiresome. Well, aren't we all? And aren't the people who are living in the city who are affected by it day in and day out? And hearing that, you know, you don't agree, Councillor Collison, with some of the aggressive tones that we use in our letters. We should be aggressive because this is affecting real people. And I mean, Councillor Merry talked about some of the major pressures that we're facing at the minute. But for me, we had a joint lead member briefing yesterday, and we had a report that told us about the impacts of welfare reform on people living in this city and what we've been trying to do through using discretionary housing payments. Now, when they were set up, that was supposed to be to provide temporary support to people who were struggling. And that report yesterday made it blatantly clear that this is no longer about temporary solutions, because the impact of welfare reform is meaning that people cannot even afford social rents. We know we have a housing crisis. We know that we don't have enough social housing, but when people can't even afford social rents, what does that tell you about government policy and the impact on the people in this city? Some of the figures from the report: in December 2016, 279 households in this city with children had an immediate benefit cut of an average of £50 a week, and 34 of those lost over £100 a week immediately. The DWP statement, it's shocking. The DWP stated themselves, the benefit cap is likely to affect where different family types will be able to live. Housing benefit may no longer cover housing costs, and some households may go into rent arrears. Some households are likely to present as homeless and may as a result need to move into more expensive temporary accommodation at a cost to the local authority. That was the DWP statement. And what we're seeing in Salford is that is a reality. You know, and that's not just about the financial cost of this council, it's about the cost to lives, the cost to those parents, the cost to those children growing up in poverty, the impact on their physical health, on their mental health, on their long-term opportunities and aspirations. It's absolutely disgraceful. In 7 months last year, we had 1,600 applications for emergency assistance in the city. We've seen a 2% budget cut in our discretionary housing payment this year. Figure that one out when we've got an increase in population and an increase in need. And when you talk about new burdens money, with the new burdens that are placed on us as a local authority without even nearly adequately funded, and us trying to do our best to help families who are in crisis, that far outweighs any scraps that were given by the government under new burdens money. So I just think it's quite clear once again that the reality that Salford Tories live in is not the reality for the rest of the people in the city. And I kind of just feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall, because if I can't get you to understand the reality and the crisis that people are living in this city, the crisis that we've got in terms of our funding, because your government, I'll say it again, have took half of our money off us. You can't argue that, you can't justify it. I wish you would stop trying and just listen to us, because if I can't convince you, how do we convince the government to properly fund our services and to support families in crisis? I just feel at an utter loss.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. I'm going to ask Councillor Merry to respond now, and then we're having a 10-minute break.
I thought that was an incredibly passionate speech by Councillor Stone, which put the arguments so much strong, in a very strong basis for what we stand for on this side of the chamber. And the only thing I would say to Councillor Stone is don't ever lose sight of that anger, right? It's really important that you feel that anger, because it shows that you care passionately about what happens to the people of this city and what happens to their future. And I can illustrate this by perhaps a surprising group, which just shows you our approach to this community more than the Tories. I'm talking about, in my area, I've got an Orthodox Jewish community who contacted me about the Festival of Purim, which some of you may have seen is quite a colourful spectacle where they all dress up in fancy dress, go around the streets and generally make quite a pleasant clamour at that moment in time. Unfortunately, it was happening at the height of the snowstorm. And I want to pay tribute to Councillor Lancaster's department. They made a request, could we do something about gritting the road so that little children wouldn't fall over when they were walking around the area? Your department responded magnificently to that, and they were able to celebrate that particular festival, which is an important part of their calendar. And then they were telling me about the attitude of the Conservative government to them, which professes to care about them, but then introduces a cap on the number of children you can give paid benefit for in the family. Now, those of us who know the Orthodox Jewish communities in my area will know they have very large families, and they feel that they're being discriminated against by this Tory government in the policies that are actually being followed by it. So that, I think, is the difference between a public sector that cares about people and a public sector that just applies a willy-nilly formula. And that brings me on to Councillor Turner. First of all, I wonder if he's going to campaign for Tory MPs not to go to Westminster but to stay in their constituencies. If he's going to do that, I would be very much in favour of that particular initiative. I go further. I think the City Mayor could promise to, say, stay away from Manchester for a week if Tory MPs stayed away from Westminster for a month and didn't actually pass through anti-Salford legislation. I can particularly make that promise because I would be attending on his behalf, so I'm quite in favour of that. But the fact is, right, that the reason we go to Manchester, the reason I go to the LGA is quite, as Councillor Jones has said, we are there fighting on behalf of the people of Salford. We have to ensure that we get a fair deal at Greater Manchester, a fair deal nationally, and to actually put our case to Conservative ministers. Unfortunately, I don't like going to the LGA to put my case to Conservative ministers. I'd rather they were Labour ministers, but I recognise that I have to talk to them and try and persuade them of the strength of our opinion. So, no, I don't think the City Mayor should apologise for going to Manchester. I think that's an absolutely critical part of the job. Can I turn now to Councillor Collinson's speech, which I thought was a little kill. First of all, Councillor Clarkson, I didn't realise you had a spin doctor next to you, which tells us what you really meant to say at the budget meeting, and then goes into great detail about what should have been said at the budget detail. I'd keep an eye on that if I were you. And the fact is that you agreed with us. You actually agreed that the budget we were putting forward, you couldn't find any flaws in it. I know you might want to make reference to what happened in the past. You couldn't actually find anything in the proposals that the City Mayor and Councillor Hines had worked out between you. I think Councillor Hines was very disappointed that you didn't put forward an alternative budget. He loves alternative budgets. He eats them for breakfast, quite frankly. And I was a little disappointed that I think Councillor Hines was a bit disconcerted by the fact it's a bit like trying to punch somebody and then discovering that they're not there in the first place. So you know, nevertheless, I thought we put forward a very strong argument. And that brings me to the point, Councillor Turner, I really wish, and I'm sure there are officers that can educate you about local government finance, about this largesse that apparently we get from government. You talk about business rates and about the money we get back from the government in terms of that. Do you know the reason why we get so much back in business rates? It's because of the hard work that this city council has been putting in to actually develop this city and to give it a future by making sure the businesses come to Salford, and yes, they pay their business rates, and yes, that goes to government, and yes, they very generously give us the money back. I must try that with, does somebody want me to lend me £10, and perhaps I might give them a £5 back at a later stage, because that's exactly what the government does. They take all this money and then graciously they allow us some of it back and to actually spend. And can I just point out something to the good people of Salford? The majority of the council tax rises that have been caused over the last few years are because of government diktat. They have said to us, we'd rather not raise ordinary taxation because that might affect the Russian oligarchs and people like that. We'd rather not do that, right? We'd rather you charge the ordinary people of Salford for social care by raising council tax. And it left us in a dilemma. And it's a dilemma which all of us face in local government, and I can understand why some people despair the whole thing. The dilemma is, do we charge the ordinary people of Salford and provide a decent service, or do we say we're not taking part in this particular sham? Well, of course we have to. We have to raise the council tax to get the money in to support the people in the adult social care that we provide. We're going to talk about the anti-poverty strategy after the break, and part of that is going to be about how we're correcting situations that have been caused by this government. So please, don't lecture us about how wonderful the government is. I suspect if that's the line you're rehearsing to go out on the doorstep, I'd actually ask you, come to Broughton and say what you're going to say, or Langworthy or anywhere else. I'm sure you'll be getting a very good reception by people when you tell them how much the government is looking after their particular interests. So, I've been grateful for all the support that's been shown across this chamber. I think the key now is to get out, not just to give this message in this chamber, but to give this message on the streets when we're knocking on the doorstep and expose this Tory government and opposition for what they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Merry. It's a 10-minute break now. Thank you. Okay. Item 11. Councillor Boschel, you'll make a statement, yeah?
Thank you, Chair. In February last year, Salford launched its Tackling Poverty strategy, demonstrating the city's commitment to tackling poverty and inequality. This was supported by an extra £3 million investment in services to help some of our most vulnerable residents. The strategy set out the ambitious approach we will take over the next few years to support residents who, as we've heard earlier, are really facing hard levels of poverty. 1 year on, we've produced a report for the Council to highlight some of the progress we've made. This will also be available online from tomorrow. Working closely with partners and the Salford Anti-Poverty Truth Commission, we've worked really hard this year to find new and improved ways to support vulnerable people struggling to make ends meet at a time when we continue to face unprecedented budget pressures. The cumulative effect of yearly central government cuts has seen the Council's core funding halved since 2010. Some of the major changes we've made over the past 12 months include introducing a new and fairer approach to collecting council tax, becoming the first council in Greater Manchester and only the 11th in the whole country to sign a national good practice collection protocol designed to make collecting this vital tax fairer and more effective. The protocol is supported by Citizens Advice and the local government associations, so it's based on nationally tried and tested good practice. Although we're clear that this is about collecting what is owed to fund vital council services, we're equally clear that piling additional enforcement fees onto an already unmanageable debt for people who are struggling to pay is not the way forward. As part of new ways of working, we've stopped the use of bailiffs to collect debt from vulnerable residents, the council tax reduction scheme. Instead, anyone in arrears is being invited to sit down with an independent debt advisor and get help to work out a sustainable council tax payment plan and sort out their long-term financial situation. This will help to both prevent further debt and help alleviate the unnecessary stress that was being caused. We've also managed to keep the current council tax reduction scheme going for 3 years now. Not all councils have, helping around 25,700 pensioners and those on the lowest income to pay their council tax bills. This year we've exempted around 50 care leavers aged 18 to 21 from paying council tax altogether to help give them a boost into independence. This will apply whether they stay in Salford or settle elsewhere and will apply for future care leavers too. We've boosted the pay of 300 of our dedicated home care workers by more than 10%, and we remain the only local authority in Greater Manchester to pay all our staff at least the real UK living wage. To tackle the growing crisis of hunger in the city, we've been working with the Salford Food Share Network to ensure the continuation of vital support for some of our most vulnerable communities. This includes investing £75,000 to strengthen Salford's under-pressure food banks, with new ones opened in Eccles and Earlham, and plans for a new Swinton food bank well underway to make sure all areas of our city are covered. We've introduced food shopping vouchers to the Salford Assist scheme to be spent at Morrison's, and shortly we'll be including Aldi in this, to help provide even greater choice and dignity for people struggling to feed their families. However, we're also looking at more sustainable ways to tackle food poverty in Salford, with a longer-term aim to set up a network of local food clubs, 4 of which have already been established and a further 4 to be set up later this year. Our £170,000 investment in Salford's Credit Union has helped to increase access to affordable credit, and savings has directly led to an impressive 106% increase in membership and 21.6% increase in the amount of new affordable loans approved, saving members more than £1.6 million in potential high interest charges. Our extra £70,000 funding for the Council's Welfare Rights and Debt Advice Service has helped to support 3,436 people this year with independent, free help and advice, securing nearly £5 million in extra disposable income for Salford residents. Our additional £300,000 investment in Salford Assist has provided a real lifeline for more than 3,000 vulnerable people in crisis, so that they can access short-term emergency help such as paying for food, electricity, gas and essential furniture, a 62% increase in need from the year before. And in January, our Anti-Poverty Task Force, a joint research collaboration, launched its first research report exploring the lives of tenants in cities' private rented sector. The report, Precious Lives, has provided powerful insight into the issues that private renters face, particularly around affordability, poor housing conditions and insecure tenancies. And that has drawn attention in the national media to a section of our community too often neglected by national politics. Regardless of the progress we've made, we know there remains a lot to do. Recent research published by End Child Poverty shows that more than half of all children in the UK's poorest areas are now growing up in poverty, as the impact of cuts to benefits and rollout of universal credit continues to be felt by the least well off. It's little wonder members on this side of the chamber get so passionate and upset with comments that have been made. This is why we're more determined than ever to hold the government to account and campaign harder than ever for a better deal for Salford. This year, we'll continue to work with communities, partners, businesses, the voluntary community and social enterprise sector to continue to deliver our strategy to help the most vulnerable residents in Salford. The key areas of focus will be delivering the city's refreshed homelessness strategy and meeting the new obligations laid out in the Homelessness Reduction Act. To mitigate the impact of the full service rollout of universal credit that's likely to further impoverish low-income families in the city, and that rollout will start in Salford completely in September. And to build the city's first new council houses in years, and you've heard from Councillor Merry the focus that we've already had on that. I know individually we share concern, all of us, about the extent of poverty and inequality that exists in our communities. And I'm committed to continue to work with partners to achieve much more in the coming year. But we need to remember this work is needed because we have a government that has implemented welfare reform policies and the policies of austerity. And this work is only happening because in Salford we have a Labour-led council. Thank you.
Tracy Kelly.
Thank you, Councillor Bosham.
Tracy Kelly.
Councillor Kelly.
Hi Paul, I welcome that report, and as lead member for housing I can sympathise with some of the people that we are supporting. I'd like, when our opposition, Councillor Turner mentioned austerity is getting on his nerves, or it's a word that we use quite we use it quite too often. Please come and visit some of the places that I'm visiting in my new role as lead member for housing, and we will see that austerity is affecting more people than we'd like it to be. The homelessness and rough sleepers is increasing, and as in Councillor Boschell's report, we're finding that more and more people are looking towards universal credit that we know is going to be coming through our system very soon across the whole of the city. Some of those people that are having to use universal credit are being battered because they are, in terms of having 50 pence left when they get their benefits. How can they use that for the rents that they need to pay? We know that we have to use private rented sector, and without them we would struggle because we don't have the housing stock. Although some of the private rented sector we accept are very useful to us, Some of them are not so good landlords, and when we're facing evictions, we're being asked by our other directorates, can we look at that because it has an effect on children's services, we're having to use temporary accommodation, people's in bed and breakfast. All this is at a cost to this council, and as it's been said in lots of the reports this morning, 50% of our budget has been cut over the last 8 years. For me, I didn't become a councillor to have a Dickensian approach. I wanted to support people, to enhance their lives, to make them better. I myself have suffered having to look towards the rented sector, and without it, it's not there, it's there to help us in times of need. We haven't got those properties in times of need. For me, we need more help, and yes, Councillor Collinson said some of her cases are complex. We're all dealing with complex cases. We want to work for the people of this city. We want to fight against this Tory government to say, help us, and support the people that I'm standing here and fighting for.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report. I welcome the work that's gone into it and I hope it continues on. The comment I'd like to make is, it's a plea really. I've got serious concerns about affordable warmth in the city, and that is in relation to people that are using prepaid meters where you can top up with your phone or pay. The cost of that seems to be way more than your normal people who pay by direct debit. I know, for example, where there's a person on benefits of £100 a week, £50 a week has to be used to feed the meter. That can't be right in terms of the cost. And that particular company, I'm prepared to name and shame them, Utility, are going to put their prices up by 2% in April. And there's a lot of people in Pendleton Together, for example, that use that company. So my plea would be to this council, can we look to see if there's anything we can do in tackling that particular issue? Because I believe if we can make affordable warmth, that would release income that could be then used better for those families in poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mullen. Councillor Hines.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I commend Councillor Bossell's report, and I know that she, obviously, that it was one of the Mayor's priorities, but she has worked extremely hard in bringing that report, and it's so crucial and important to the people of City that need our help. Who would have ever thought that we were perhaps having this debate as we are now? Years ago, when I started to cut my teeth politically, we talked about relative poverty. That was always an issue, relative poverty. But really, compared with absolute poverty, and many people now in this city and countrywide are suffering absolute poverty, that don't know one day to the next how they're going to feed the kids, feed the family, so forth. Keep, as Councillor Mullen has just said, keep the house warm. It's absolutely a disgrace in a country that is either the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. An absolute disgrace. And I would say to Councillor Turner, who scorned austerity in the last debate, is he going to say that there is no real poverty or absolute poverty now in this country? And what does this government do? I'll tell you what it's done in the last 8 years. It's capped benefits. It's made people go on and sanction them to get monies, desperate people. It's brought the council tax reduction scheme in by starving us of monies. And thankfully, I know it's gone up over the years, we started off at about 8%. Mind you, there was a big subsidy as well to keep it at 8%. Then it went to 12, now it's 15. And I and the Mayor and the Cabinet would like to bring the council tax reduction scheme in a much fairer, but without help it means, or other ways and means, it means of course more subsidy. What else have they done? Didn't they not bring the bedroom tax in? And the problems that that caused? I've mentioned sanctions, I've mentioned a cap on benefits, and universal credit that's supposed to be, according to the government, the panacea for assisting people and getting people out of this so-called poverty. They never use, I've never heard the government use the word poverty, by the way. It's not on there, it's not in their vocabulary, the word poverty. Now, I'm not holding my breath on the universal credit, as Councillor Boschel has said, and what may come about. We'll have to watch the space very, very clearly. But here we are, in 2018, having this debate on poverty, an absolute disgrace in this country today. And when we talk about where we're going, I'd love to know where we're going in a positive way. This is really a crying shame. I keep mentioning, and I've mentioned it before, we are a tale of two cities. And quite rightly, we shout out from the rooftops when we've done something well and bringing investment in. But we are the 22nd most deprived city in this country, and all that that means. It's across the board, whether it's, as Councillor Kelly said, in housing, whether it's under Councillor Stone's domain in children, whether it's Councillor Reynolds in you don't care. There's a common theme throughout all that, and that's poverty, and it must be eroded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, colleagues. Just a couple of brief comments, really, to welcome this report and the comments from the Deputy Mayor of the City Council. I was at a meeting in Preston a couple of months ago, and they've given a brief breakdown of the cost of austerity and the cost of the crash on every individual in the UK, and each individual has lost something in the region of £4,500 per person. And if Councillor Turner is saying it's tiresome, I can assure you those people who aren't earning an awful lot of money to have lost £4,500 per person, that is pretty tiresome and is pretty shocking, I think. And that's the reality of it. And yet, I was at a meeting yesterday in the city centre of Manchester, and the banks have cost us, the nation, around £1.5 trillion. That's huge money. That's the type of money that has impacts on whole economies. But at a very local level, and just to comment on the points made by the Deputy Mayor, in terms of Salford Credit Union, we are very much involved with the anti-poverty strategy in the city, and the money that was granted to us a year or so ago, we have made very good use of that, and we have now positive proof that we're able to save people significant amounts of money. And if you save money in the local economy, the local people, they don't spend on yachts, and they don't spend on BMWs, and they don't spend on Rolls Royces and all of the rest of it. Where do they spend that money? They spend that money into local shops and local communities and so on. That money circulates in the economy. So the money that was given to the credit union has been used very, very positively, and we've saved something in the region of £1.6 million by comparison with the payday lenders. We are very much involved with the anti-loan shark campaign. It was late last year, I think, or early this year, I can't remember when, so many campaigns going on. And there were, I think, something like 15 loan shark organisations in the Pendleton area. At our board meeting yesterday, which I dashed back to from our meeting in Manchester, our deputy manager told us that something in the region of half of those payday lenders have now closed down. And the reason is because more and more people are coming. We've doubled our membership, and we hope to double our loan book. More people are now coming to the credit union rather than going to the payday lenders, where they're charging 3, 4, 5,000% per annum. So it is beginning to work. It can be made to work with good management and good care. So you know, the austerity is impacting, but these small credit unions, cooperatives, keep the money in the local economy, and it helps people despite the austerity. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. One of the disappointing things of going last is everyone generally pretty much captures off all your points, but I too welcome the report that Councillor Boxall's brought forward. And in the last 12 months, when you read through the booklet, there's a hell of a lot of good work that's been going on. So thank you to Councillor Boxall and all the officers that have been involved and those that have been contributing in the consultations, because it'll benefit a lot of residents in my ward, so I hold this very dear to my heart. I'd also like to mention it's the most vulnerable in the city that usually face poverty, and we as the council have a duty under the Equalities Act to make sure that we enable equality right across the board, whether that's in BME or disabilities or women with children, because they are the hardest hit communities who will suffer from poverty. And I'd also like to mention the mental health benefits that will be given to the people, because we all know poverty is one of the things that drags people down and really has a detriment to the mental health. So it's really good on many levels, this document, as Councillor Hines said before. And when we talk about tired of austerity, I think there's a lot of people that are tired of austerity. Those that are in poverty and are suffering the most are very, very, very tired of austerity. So I agree with Councillor Turner, and hope he can take that message back to government and get some heads turning up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Bentham.
Thank you, Chair. I would personally like to extend my thanks to Paula and everybody that's worked on this strategy. And as a person who works with some of this city's most vulnerable people, I'd like to point out how crucial some of these provisions are to the people that really need help. Just last Friday, I had to phone an ambulance for a Salford resident who was suicidal due to welfare reform. I've had to refer clients to the Salford Assist scheme who had dietary requirements and wouldn't have survived on the food that was available that people had donated to the food bank. And I'm really proud that despite everything this government has done, this council is working hard to support its most vulnerable people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bentham. Councillor McIntyre.
In page 6 in this book, there's one thing that really caught my eye, and that was the waiving of the £11 that was charged for copies of birth certificates. It caught my mind because my background was in mental health, and I worked with people who were homeless, and for a sense of belonging, for a sense of purpose, for a sense of well-being, that is really important to the people who are homeless, to anybody, in fact. And if we're looking at the essentials to life and the need to operate the way you want to within that life, it's important that you have that sense of belonging, that sense of worth, that sense of being. It allows people access to employment, it allows access to housing, and also, in some cases, allows access to GP surgeries and services. So that really did catch my eye, and I think that is something, in addition, that we should be proud that we recognise that we did something about. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McIntyre. Councillor Jane Hamilton.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Turner, you managed to really knock the stuffing out of me this morning, I'm afraid to say, regards with the austerity comment. I wanted to say I think it's a great idea about Al Paul and the team, the mayoral team and the cabinet and everyone else has worked together to provide more social housing on Duchy for me in my area, Irwell Riverside. But the main thing I did want to make a comment about, I think when you're shopping, when you're food shopping next time, look around in the supermarket, look around at the behaviours people have. Putting food to one side to see if they can afford it or not. I've many chats in supermarkets, and most of the people I speak to are working people. They're out there, they're grafting, the working minimum wage, 0-hour contracts. We all know it's all been said. But next time you go in the supermarket, watch people's behaviours. It really is an education. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. I'm going to ask Councillor Bosham to respond now.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all members who've really demonstrated an empathy with our residents in Salford today. It's been really quite moving, and clearly everyone is fully supportive of the work that we're doing. Councillor Mullen, thank you for raising the issue of fuel poverty. It's been more prevalent with the really poor weather that we've had recently, but especially for people who have prepaid meters, that is an issue. One of the things I didn't raise, because not everything was in that report, is that through the Salford Foundation, we do actually fund an energy advisor, I've just noted, an energy advisor looking to reduce fuel poverty. And one of the focuses there is about working with people to try and replace prepaid meters with credit meters. So if people do have examples of where people do need that support, please send it to me and I'll send it on and make sure that they get that. But that's work that we need to continue, and we need to focus around fuel poverty. Councillor King, Credit Union doing a fantastic job, really pleased to support it, and I think we're really demonstrating, as you said now, the difference that's being made in Salford through that. I just hope we continue and that we have more campaigns against loan sharks in Salford, which we're planning as well. Councillor Sharp, you're absolutely correct. The impact that poverty has on health, mental health, and as has been demonstrated then by Councillor Bentham, it has a real impact on people's lives. It has an impact on the City Council in providing services. It has an impact on our health services as well. So you're absolutely right with that. Councillor McIntyre, birth certificates. I think we were one of the first to do that, and it has made a real big difference. And thank you for raising that comment. And Councillor Hamilton, for reminding us as well that it isn't people out of work, it's people in work that are in poverty. And that's been a major issue as well. So thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you, Councillor Bosham. I'm now going to, before item 12, there are 4 members of the council that are retiring. This is the last council. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to present them with little gifts and memorial from when we go. Okay? All the 4 councillors that are retiring, I think John Merry mentioned it earlier, and we as a council and the people of the city couldn't actually evaluate the good that they've done, because sometimes, you know, these jobs are very difficult, very complex, and I applaud all of them for the work they've done. But we'll start with the presentations. Councillor Christine Hudson. Christine Hudson joined the council May 1997 as a councillor for Cadizet, and she's been my deputy a few times, so she's had her problems. When she retires on the 3rd of May, she will have served for 21 years. So you're 21 today, 21 today. Well done, Christine. You know what I think of you personally and what you've done for the residents of your ward and also this city, so thank you very much. Councillor Bernard Lee. Bernard joined the council in May 1996 and brought with him a kind of humour that many of us fail to understand. But you've done your bit for your ward in this city, Bernard, and I'd like you to come and receive this gift and certificate. Now, Bernard, that's the first time you've been certified, hasn't it?
That's what you think.
Well,
Thanks very much.
You can say something now, or we'll do something later.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. 20 years is a long time. Councillor Jones has just said that this is a ticking bomb. I hope it isn't. And I said, well, I don't think it's a bomb, but there we are. I'd like to just say thank you very much indeed to all my council colleagues, and also to the officers who have assisted me during the past 20 years. It doesn't seem like 20 years, it's all gone in a flash. But come the 3rd of May, I shall be promoted to a member of the community. And as such, we'll probably be able to question councillors much better than I can, and even more effectively than I have done in the past 20 years. So many thanks indeed for all of your help and cooperation. I look forward to seeing you in the future, but not in this capacity. Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Howard Bolkine is also retiring. He's not here today, but we do have the same good wishes, and I do know that Councillor Heather Fletcher early on wanted to say something about that. Would you like to do that now, Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, I want to pay a short tribute, actually, is to Councillor Lee. Because I'd rather just say about Councillor Lee, who has been very helpful to me. And 2 years ago, I was very, very nervous out on the campaign trail, and it was Councillor Lee, Councillor Hines, Councillor Dawson and Councillor John Ferguson who instilled some confidence in me, and they were of great comfort to me and gave me lots of advice, and I affectionately called them the Crazy Gang, Swinton and Pendleby Crazy Gang. And I'd just like to say a bit more about Councillor Lee. He's campaigns in all sorts of weather, and in fact he walks quicker than I do. I have trouble keeping up with him. And finally, over the past 2 years, he's taken me aside a few times to give me some quiet advice and helpful advice and invaluable advice. And I wish him a very long and happy retirement, and thank you for your help, Councillor Lee.
We're going back to Christine Hudson, who you never give an opportunity. I tried to overcome Christine speaking because we could be here a while. Christine Hudson.
Well, thank you, Chair. It was a very sad day for me, but echoing what John said, my family are elated to get me back. But I'd like to thank fellow councillors and friends for the way they've supported me through the very dark days, and they've been absolutely wonderful. It's been a great honour and a pleasure and a privilege to serve Earlham and Cadishead and the Salford residents. It's a fantastic council this, and we do a wonderful job. This side, carry on doing what you're doing. It's absolutely fantastic. I'd like to thank all the officers for the support, everything they've done. And Tim, when I had that wonderful year as the mayor, he worked really hard. So it will work for you new mayors, and good luck to you too as well when it comes along. So thank you very much for all of you for your support.
Thanks, Christine. I'll be seeing you again. It might be in Forest Bank, but obviously you again. But thanks for what you've done for this city. All-kind isn't here, and so therefore, unless somebody wants to say something, I intend to present this at another place to Councillor Bolkine. Okay? We now have Councillor Colin Crompton. And Colin, Compton.
Yeah, Compton. Yeah, but you said Colin.
Did I?
Yeah, he was the wheel tappers and shunters.
Well, no, that was your brother. My apologies for that. Your Colin did very well on the telly, didn't he?
Yeah, he did well for himself,
anyway,
didn't he? Yeah.
Colin, you've been a councillor since... You've been a councillor since 2000... Don't know my humour. 2004.
You're doing well, Jim. Carry on.
And that's the councillor for Worsley Ward, so well done. And I'm sure everybody will miss you, Colin. Graham. And we'll miss you here at the council. So thanks for what you've done. And if you'd like to take these little gifts and then perhaps say a word.
I will indeed.
And that gives you a reminder of the Wheel Tappers and Shunters Club.
Right, okay. Thank you. I didn't expect this morning. So I haven't prepared, but I'd just like to say I've had 14 wonderful years coming here. I did it after retirement from Civvy Street. I had no ambitions to aspire to anything here. Quite happy to serve my residents and sit on the back benches. Had enough pole climbing in Civvy Street, which I managed from company director, took a company from 2 million to 21 million turnover. So I did my bit for the country. I'm going to miss you all. I'd like to thank all the staff that have been so helpful during those 14 years. I must say I've enjoyed the chats on certain committees that I've been on, and some other committees that I'd rather not have been on. But I am going to miss you, and I thank everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Just ask Lisa to say something. Jim says ask Lisa Stone. Lisa Stone.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you don't mind. I just wanted to say a very personal thank you to Councillor Hudson, just quickly. I do feel when I was first elected, she did take me under her wing, which I needed and very much appreciated. But more than that, when I had my baby, Jacob, in 2014, I was the first councillor in Salford to give birth in office, which caused a bit of a panic because no one quite knew what to do with a pregnant councillor and then somebody who was rocking up with babies in meetings. Quite intimidating, having your first child and thinking, well, what is appropriate? I still want to represent my constituents, I still want to be a part of meetings, but breastfeeding for the first 6 months, obviously, more difficult. And Christine, Councillor Hudson, was absolutely superb as our Mayor and Chair of Council during that year. And I will never forget how welcome she made me, how comfortable she made me feel sitting in the chamber with Jacob, and how she used to smile and wave and play with him from sitting up there during the meeting. So just my personal thanks for making what was a difficult adjustment much better and much easier, and thank you, and I wish you all the best.
Councillor Ferguson.
I'd just like to say a few words. First of all, in relation to Councillor Lee, I knew Bernard well before I became a councillor. I think it's about 24 years since I first met him. And in the last 8 years as a councillor, I think he was really dedicated when he was the ceremonial mayor. But I think more importantly than that, I think he's been a tenacious councillor on behalf of the residents of Pendlebury Ward. And I'm sure that it's not just me that's thanking him today, but I think the residents of Pendlebury Ward should give him the thanks as well for the time and effort that he's put in on their behalf. Can I also just say a few words about Graham? I won't say. And that is, I'd like to thank Graham for the work that he's done on the Employers Forum in the last couple of years that I've been doing that. He's been a particularly helpful person on there. And so thank you, Graham, for the assistance that you've given on the Employers Forum.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether this is a reflection on me or not, but 3 of the retiring members are members of the licensing panel. and the other one is an ex-member of the licensing panel. So I don't know whether that is a reflection on me. But I just want to say a big thank you to all 3 members. They've been absolutely superb on what they've done on licensing. Licensing is not the easiest of panels, and all 3 have played a major part. Certainly, Graham as an opposition member, Graham has certainly been vocal and made some very sensible decisions, and I do wish Graham all the best. Bernard's been an absolute star at times. He's always sort of supported me great, because obviously Bernard had been on the licensing panel for a long time, and we've had many a chat, and not just that, I'll miss our football chats as well, because we both like lower league football as well as Premier League football. But as for Christine, well, where do you begin? What a star. Christine has just been an absolutely fantastic support to me as well. She's been my deputy lead member a couple of times. We've been involved in all sorts of things together, but one memory that will always, always hold dear is when she dragged me into a lingerie shop because she'd seen some underwear she liked. She said, "Come on, you've got to come in with me." And that is still on my mind. I'm scarred for life, Christine. No, but I think, as Christine said, a family probably are glad to get her back. I think, she's got an absolutely superb family, from her daughters, her grandchildren, and obviously the long-suffering Harry. But I'm going to miss Christine sort of more than ever. So all the best to you, kid. Thank you.
Thanks, John, for that. I do hope the underwear fits. It was word association with Graham, although I've seen you with a flat cap on. But good luck to all of those that are retiring today. Thank you. But we'll go on to the next item, which is item 12. General questions to the undermentioned on your agenda, and I'll read out the names. Councillor Paul Boschell, any questions or comments? Okay. Councillor John Melly. Councillor Bill Hines.
Councillor Neil Reynolds.
Pardon?
Councillor Neil Reynolds has a question.
Councillor Neil Reynolds.
I'd just like to ask Councillor Hines for an update on the fair funding position, on Salford's fair funding position, please.
Councillor, well, yes, the fair funding, obviously there's a review going on at the moment with government, also with the LGA and the body that's been set up to look at fair funding for council tax. Needless to say, and over the years, we haven't had a look at fair funding for about 10 years. But the question is, what is fair funding? So this is going to be the, when we really get down to it, what they come out, government are making certain statements about fair funding. But again, there's no doubt during the last 8 years, local government has suffered, I would argue, of all the public services, and many have been hammered. But proportionally, local government, I think, has been hit more than any other element in local government, in public spending. So it's desperate that we need it. Now, if you go back, I mean, I was a councillor when we had the old rating system. And Roger, you were on before me. So, you know, the old rating system, I can remember. You remember it, sir? I do. He was a good boxer, Randy's brother. The point is that when we had that old rating system, I can remember, just when I got on the council here in 1984, I think that rate in 1985, a year later, we actually raised the rates by 31%. Can you remember, Roger? 31%. And the rates at that time, nobody really batted an eyelid. Nobody batted an eyelid. Now, of course, council tax is really on everybody's mind as the increases go on and on. So we desperately need a fair funding alternative. And a few months ago, I was with the mayor when civil servants came down, talking about fair funding and how they were going to work with government to bring it about. Now, when you look, and at the moment we've just put in our observations on it, and Joanne Hardman and her team have done very, very well in what we do. Whether we get that, it's another matter. But when you look at the report, and I don't intend to go all through, it's a very technical report, so what I will do, though, Neil, I will send you the issue and you can peruse it at your own leisure. But what the key things that hit me of where they want to look at it, we talk about transparency. And really, at the minute, there's many people that are really bemused by local government funding and the transparency issues. And they talk about, and this is important, certainly for me and certainly for Salford, that there will be a relative need. Now that, don't hold your breath on that, we'll have to wait and see what comes out when we talk about relative need. We know in this city, by the fact that we're the 22nd most deprived, as I said earlier on, needs are very, very important to us. So we really need to understand where government are coming from on the needs side of it. Transitional arrangements, we'll have to look at that. We know, by the way, that because we're part of and agreed a number of years ago to participate in a longer term rating system, if you want to call it that, till 2020. That will carry on. So it will be after that we start to see that. Now at the moment, and this just shows you the complexities, on measuring relative need, there are 120 indicators, 120, that tell government what relative need is, what it is. It's so important that we establish exactly, transparently, and understand it, that where we go. As I say, it's a complicated issue, can't go into it all, but I will send all members the report so that they can peruse it at their leisure. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor David Lancaster.
Yeah, I think it's a question that it's important that we do it. I want to put on record on behalf of the City Council. So the workforce over the bad weather we've had, particularly the dustbin men, only two authorities in Greater Manchester actually carried on with the collection. They carried on throughout the bad weather. Now I know it's not only just been dustbin men, it's also other council staff, so I want to actually pass on our congratulations as council on the way the staff worked through those difficult periods and the help they gave people through that period.
Councillor John Ferguson early on mentioned the quality of staff we have in whatever department, and I think it's good for them to be recognised. Thank you for that. It's Councillor Derek Antabus. No questions there. Not here, is it? Councillor Lisa Stone. Questions? No. Councillor Gina Reynolds. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As I'm a staunch supporter of Age Concern, and in particular Critchley House in my ward of Swinton South, I'd like to know how we're progressing with the age-friendly city status. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. We've engaged with over 200 residents, and we formed from those groups right across the city. We formed an older people's network. We're about halfway through the 3 to 5 year plan. And we're putting a variety of programmes in place. We've recently put a robust falls prevention plan in. As you're probably aware, we're about the second highest in Greater Manchester with falls. And since we've put this plan in, we've actually started to see a bit of a reduction in our falls, which is good news. So we'll obviously be monitoring that closely. We're looking at redesigning our intermediate care facilities. We're putting in place early diagnosis of dementia programmes. So we're looking at a whole range of different redesigns of pathways for older people from a health point of view. I'm really pleased that we've just recently, we put in a bid for an active ageing programme along with other authorities across GM to Sport England, and we've been allocated 71,000, so we've just found out we've been successful with that. And that'll mean we'll be able to help address barriers to older people participating in activities. We'll be building up their confidence to become active, and supporting people over 55, which includes myself, encouraging them to do at least 30 minutes of moderate activity per week. Can you not, John? And we'll be designing fun and social-based activities within community settings. So we're hoping to get cracking with that across the city. We're working in partnership. Heather's just referenced Age UK. We're working in partnership with them, inspiring communities together, and Salford Community Leisure.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor John Ferguson. Workforce. No? Thank you all for that. Councillor Collinson.
Thank you, Chair. Where is it? I've been doing a series of visits recently to alternative provision providers. Alternative provision is for young people who have disengaged with education, mainstream education, for a number of reasons. There could be behavioural issues, there could be young people who have very tight bail conditions who aren't allowed to be in the education environment of their own school. And I don't know how many of you are aware of the alternative provision out there. It's absolutely superb. And I'd ask Councillor Brocklehurst to maybe invite Sheila Arnott, who's the lead for alternative provision, to attend a children's scrutiny meeting just to let members know what actually is out there, because I suspect not everybody knows what is available. And the provision that I've visited so far, just to name 3 of them, YMCA, Gorse Hill Studios in Stratford and Carrington Riding Centre, just amazing. And how many of you actually knew about it? Because I didn't until I started visiting them. So it's just a request that this lady is invited to address scrutiny. Thank you.
Want to say anything, Councillor?
Councillor Stone. Councillor Stone.
Is it Councillor Stone we're talking to now? I give another name before.
Sorry.
No, he's not.
Right. Thank you. I didn't have forewarning about that, so you caught me by surprise. Happy to do so. I had the pleasure of attending a joint briefing session with Councillor Collinson, and it is a service that isn't well known, but it's doing excellent work. I'm quite happy to invite the officers to speak to Children's Services scrutiny panel, assuming that I'm re-elected in that position, but we'll put that invite in now, pre-election, and happy to advertise that through the work of the panel. And also, I think it's opportune to actually carry out a piece of scrutiny work around that service, because it's not just areas of concern that we look at. We should look at our areas of success and our exceptional contribution to services. And it's worth highlighting those and advertising them across the city. So, welcome the opportunity and pleased to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brocklehurst. Councillor Stoney wanted to comment now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, as lead member for children and young people, that would fall under my portfolio, so I welcome the positive comments about the alternative provision in the city. I do think we've got some fantastic providers. I know that certainly officers have put a lot of work in over the sort of last 12 to 24 months in terms of developing the alternative provision framework and working with providers. So fantastic to hear that it's been so well appreciated. And for my part, obviously great that scrutiny would like to look at that further from a positive aspect, but more than happy to take that away and circulate something to all members in terms of an explanation around what alternative provision is and an idea of what's actually happening across the city. Thank you.
John Ferguson.
Oh, sorry, John Walsh.
No, it was a wrong name. It's the one that talks normally. John Walsh? Joking, John.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. Perhaps it's a comment upon our educational system that needs looking at as well, that perhaps under the 1988 Education Act, the education should meet the needs of all learners, and perhaps we have moved too much the other way, and that schools and everyone else should be providing alternatives to those who cannot, succeed at the academic level. It says a lot about our education system that we have to have another thing like alternative provision. They should all be in the education system, and our schools should be providing for all pupils, not just a few.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor John Mullen, Chair of the Community. Any questions to John? No? Margaret Morris, Health and Adult Scrutiny Panel. Questions or comment? No. Councillor Stephen Orr, but Stephen's not here, I don't think, is it, today? It's a question to him. If you need to, you can contact Stephen. I didn't want to hear that. Item 14, questions and comments on the discharge of functions of joint authorities and outside bodies. Do members have any questions to those groups? No? Item 15. Following reports. Was you waving, Les? I'm on 15, yeah. Booth Charities, the landing at Media City and Salix Parent Board. Just to comment on which one.
But I really feel that I must again this year comment on the marvellous work that Booth Charities do I mean, just looking through the report, 21 three-year grants, about 23 Christmas grants, and countless other work they've done, and I really don't know where we'd be without them. I say it every year, but I think the board of that Boost charity certainly want commending for all the good work they do. Thank you.
Councillor Turner. Councillor John Mormisham.
Thank you, Chair. Just on regarding Salix Homes, I've got real concerns that when they promoted themselves to go for stock transfer, one of the things was looking at going for a mutual. I see from the minutes here that it's been decided that they're not actually going to do that. I think I must declare an interest as a Salix tenant. But I do think that in all their publicity when they were going out to look at this transfer to get tenants to vote yes, they put in that tenants would be more involved, that they would look at a mutual, and now, sort of reading from these minutes and an article that was in the Salford Star, they seem to have reneged on that position. And so I'd like the lead member for housing to look into that. I'm also concerned that, and I know it's government rules, on this golden share principle, that councillors are being stripped off so that there's no elected members that are going to have a voice. You know, we're going down to 2 this year, and I know that in the future it's looking at trying to phase them out. And I just think it really concerns me that, yeah, here's another housing provider that could go the same way as numerous other housing associations, coming into private landlords, investment, market rents, etc. And it's having a damaging effect on social housing in this city. And I've got to say, I'm really annoyed at the way that this has been handled by Salix.
Councillor Mormisham, did the Councillor Kelly want to respond to any of that?
John, I've taken all your comments on board, and if you're happy, I'll go away and look at the pack that was obviously where the wording is, and speak to the board members that were at this meeting where this decision was taken, and get back to you with a response. Okay?
So another one down here. Councillor Rob Sharp.
Thanks, Chair. I'm a board member of Leather Hall. Leather Hall, as you all know, is a fantastic outdoor learning facility that a lot of children go to in our city and benefit from. There's a visit coming up soon, which I'm aware Councillor Fletcher's going, but it's just worth noting that that work and that facility wouldn't still be around if it wasn't for the good work that Boost Charities do. So I'd like to note my thanks to Boost Charity for supporting Leather Hall over the recent years.
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. Does anybody want to respond to that? No. To our 4 retiring councillors, but not gone by forever, because I'm sure I'll be in the John Gilbert in a short while, John, and we'll be there. And Christine, the absent Councillor Balkind, and our own Bernard Lee. So thank you very much for those retiring councillors, and I wish you well, not just for what you do, keep interested, but keep well. Thank you very much for what you've done. It's now closed at council.